Verse 27, depart from evil and do good and dwell forevermore. Two different things. You got two commands, two orders, and one, I'll say consequence. Verse 2 is depart from evil, which means we're going to turn away. We're going to completely get away from that evil mentality, a perspective, a view. We're getting away from that sinful mindset. Do good. So there's condition number 1 is depart from evil. Condition number 2 is do good. And I thought it was really cool when I looked up what do good meant. I found this in this little bitty line of scripture on how words are used in my computer. It means to be fertile ground. So it's not just about you're putting on a good show or you're doing all the right things. Are you being fertile ground for God to work with? Are we allowing him to till us up? Are we allowing him to get the rocks out and the thorns and the nasty stuff? Or are we just putting on a show and doing good? But that being fertile ground, being good, kind, upright, gives God something to work with. If both of those fall into place, the blessing is we dwell forevermore. We're hidden in in eternity with him. Verse 28, for the Lord loveth judgment and forsaketh not his saints. They are preserved forever, but the seed of the wicked shall be cut off. Now, when I first read, for the Lord loveth judgment, I didn't understand. You ever notice that sometimes when you read scripture, it's said a certain way that if you just left it as is, it kind of feels a little rough? I mean, when you sit there and say, why would you love judgment? I don't like disciplining my children. And too many times, the word judgment is associated with a discipline, a chastening, a correction. Now, he does it because he loves us. New Testament says that he chastens those that he loves. He corrects. But to sit there and say the Lord loves judgment, proper translation is the Lord loveth in his character. He loveth justice. What's right, what's wrong. To make sure that he's carrying that on in each and every one of us, that we should be looking for what is justice, what is right, what is wrong. What is the proper way to even be moving forward in our lives? Proper decisions, proper ideologies, proper personalities, proper things that we do. Part of his attribute, God's character, is being a just God. Are we just people? Do we weigh in all the information or do we jump to conclusion? Do we look at all the pieces of the puzzle? When you look at Strong's, it details down to all the things in the judicial area, that everything from the cause of the sin all the way through its sentencing. Are we just? For the Lord loveth justice and forsaketh not his saints, which means he will never forsake us, give up on us. The word in the Strong's was relinquish us. Now, I don't know about you. For me, I love that word. I'm adopted. I had some rejection issues in my world, still working on some of them. But one of my biggest fears growing up is being adopted, that my adopted parents would at some point wake up one day and not want me the same way that my birth parents did. That they would relinquish me back into the system, kind of a thing. Now, I had no basis for any of that. But that was the fear. Because at some point, I listened to other people. Ever been down that road? You have no personal basis for the fear or the rejection or whatever it is, but because you listened to the wrong crowd and you allowed the wrong people to speak into you, all of a sudden you took their fear and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to take your fear and make it part of mine. So in my growing up, I was never in a system. I didn't have to go through foster care. I didn't have to go through any of that. I was blessed that that was not my journey. But because I listened to people who had had a different background than me, I took on their fear and said, well, at some point, they're going to put me back in something I'd never been in. See, this scripture comes back and says he's not going to forsake his saints, which means he's not going to relinquish us. We're his kids. We've been adopted into the family of God, and he will never relinquish us to the enemy. He will never give up on us. He will never sit there and say, nah, I can't do it. I mean, can you imagine the amount of heartbreak when God had to turn and just say, I can't look upon his son Jesus. But Jesus' choice made it to where God the Father will never forsake us, will never turn his back on us, will never leave us alone, will never relinquish us back to the enemy.